Welcome to Horror Audio Series, where the veil between worlds grows thin, and every whisper might be a warning. Here, we don't just tell horror stories. We summon them. Turn down the lights. Turn up your fear. The nightmare begins now.
Some deaths refuse to rest. Some spirits refuse to leave. When the veil thins between the worlds, the soul possessor awakens. Welcome to Soul Possessor. Chapter 3. The Resurrection of Possession. The morning sun had barely begun to pierce the lingering mist that blanketed the village rooftops when it happened. A scream. Not the kind born from pain. Not even the kind that grief wrests from the soul. This was something else. A high, inhuman, soul-twisting shriek that slashed through the stillness like a blade across raw flesh. It tore through the peaceful dawn like lightning splitting a blackened tree, echoing off every wall, every rooftop, every heart. It came from the marketplace, from the heart of the village where people traded rice, salt, and stories. And at the center of the chaos was Evans. Evans, the blacksmith. Evans, the man whose hands had molded iron like clay, who'd crafted gates and horseshoes and kitchen knives for 3 decades. Now, he was no longer that man. He was on the ground, writhing, curled up like a dying animal. His limbs jerked violently, as if his body were being yanked by invisible strings. Foam bubbled from his lips, thick, white, and foul, like curdled milk left too long in the heat. His fingers clawed the stone floor with such fury that the nails split from their beds, trailing dark blood in trembling lines. Then, suddenly, silence. Evans stopped moving, just like that, as if someone had snuffed out his soul like a candle flame. Gasps rose from the gathering crowd. Vendors dropped their baskets. Children hid behind their mothers. And then, in a motion so unnaturally slow it seemed deliberate, Evans stood up. He rose like a corpse tugged upright by some unseen puppeteer. His limbs hung stiffly, joints creaking. His neck cracked as he turned his face to the villagers. His eyes, oh, those eyes, were no longer human. No pupils, no warmth. Just milky white, like glass marbles dipped in smoke. Then he spoke, but the voice was not his. Sadness is immortal. Darkness will rule all. Blood, soul, will disappear. The words spilled from his lips in a calm, eerie cadence, too precise, too rehearsed, like a sermon memorized long before the body was even born. It was as if some other entity was wearing Evans's flesh like a coat. Murmurs broke out in the crowd. That's not him. What did he say? Blood? Soul? Wait, that language? Someone, a scholar's widow, old and brittle but sharp, whispered with trembling lips. That's ancient Sanskrit. That's the tongue Master Li used in his meditations. Master Li, the monk, the protector, the one who had died 3 winters ago and whose grave had been mysteriously emptied only days before. The implications settled like a leaden cloud over the villagers. Evans's head jerked suddenly. His eerie gaze swept over the onlookers, then stopped, locked, on Christina. She stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, clutching a basket of herbs, the wind tugging her hair like fingers. Her breath caught in her throat as those ghostly eyes bore into her, not seeing her face, but peering straight into her soul. Then, in a voice that was now unmistakably Evans's, human, raw, trembling, he said, "Christina Amanda, it's you. It's you." And with that, the whispers began. Not in the air, but in the people. Low, poisonous murmurs. Why her? Didn't her father die the same way? Something's wrong with that family. Christina felt the heat of 100 eyes pressed down on her like weights. Accusation, suspicion, fear. They slithered through the marketplace like a venomous mist, and in that moment, Christina knew. Whatever had entered Evans, it knew her, and the village would never look at her the same again. By midday, the village hall had transformed into a boiling pot of fear, whispers, and ancient dread. The walls, once adorned with calligraphy scrolls and faded photographs of ancestral festivals, now seemed to close in, saturated with a tension so thick it choked the air. Men argued. Women wept. Children clung to their mothers' robes, wide-eyed and silent. We must exorcise the evil spirit. No! We need to chant. Call his soul back. Evans is still in there. You fools. That's no longer Evans. That's a demon. The shouting clashed like clanging gongs. In the middle of the room, Christina sat quietly, her hands clenched in her lap until her knuckles blanched white. Her head was lowered, avoiding the dozens of darting eyes, some filled with pity, others with disgust. She could feel it. The shift. They no longer saw her as just the herbalist's daughter. She was the girl he spoke to, the cursed one, the key. Outside, Evans had been bound tightly to the central stone pillar of the ruined temple, a place once sacred, now feared. Thick hemp ropes coiled around his chest and limbs like a spider's trap, pinning him immobile. His head drooped as if unconscious, but he was not asleep. He hadn't eaten, spoken, or blinked since morning. The village elders had summoned an old monk from the mountains. Bent-backed, almost blind, his eyes clouded like misted glass. He wore a robe stained by rain and age, and his presence carried the weight of old magic. He rang a rusted bell with trembling hands, each strike sending shivers through the air. He chanted, softly at first, then louder, invoking ancient mantras in a language that had not graced the ears of villagers in generations. And then, Evans opened his eyes. No warning, no twitch of muscle. One moment, blank silence. The next, awareness, unnatural, watching. He spoke again, but his voice had changed. Deeper, more sonorous. It vibrated through bone and stone. I am not a demon. I am a messenger. Satanists will come. A chill gust swept the temple yard. The wind howled through the broken pillars like a dirge for something long buried. The village chief, a stoic man with half-white hair and eyes dulled by too many deaths, stepped forward cautiously. He held a brittle scroll wrapped in black silk, a relic passed down through generations said to contain forbidden verses of protection. He asked, voice trembling, "Who are you? Is Evans still within? Has his soul fled?" Evans did not respond. Instead, two thin lines of crimson traced their way down from the corners of his eyes, tears of blood. They rolled slowly down his cheeks, leaving behind trails that did not glisten like tears, but stained like ink. Christina could no longer sit still. She stood, walked slowly, cautiously, through the gathering, toward the stone pillar. Every step felt heavier than the last. She was not sure if it was the weight of fear or fate pulling her down. She stopped just a few feet away from Evans, or whatever remained of him. She had known this man all her life. He had helped mend the broken gate behind her house just last winter. She remembered his laugh, booming and crude, his stories of fire and steel, of shaping metal as though shaping fate itself. But now he was no more than a vessel, a shell, a doorway. Evans, or the thing possessing him, Mulbert Stay, lifted its head and looked straight into her eyes. And then, Christina felt it. Not with her senses, but her soul. Her vision flickered. Once, twice. And then she was no longer in the temple. She was sinking into a sea. No, an abyss. Thick and red. Blood. Endless, dark, hot blood. It swallowed her. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. In the center of this sea stood a black, jagged door. Floating, yet anchored by chains of bone. Ancient symbols pulsed across its surface. There, branded in its center, was the exact spiral bone symbol she had seen etched on her home's wall the night before. And then, a voice. Low, echoing, dripping with power. Complete the contract, before the demon takes the body, or all shall end. Christina screamed and fell backward, breaking from the vision like snapping a thread. The crowd gasped as she collapsed, pale and drenched in cold sweat. She scrambled to her feet, eyes wide, breath heaving. She could still taste the blood in her mouth. "He knows me," she whispered hoarsely. "It knows me." Without another word, she turned and fled, pushing past gasping villagers, fleeing not just from the demon, but from the eyes that now looked at her not with concern, but dread. She didn't stop running until she reached her home, slamming the door shut, locking it, barricading herself in. But the whispers followed. They always did. Night fell like a silent predator, stalking the village in silence, leaving nothing untouched by its breath. The oil lamp flickered uneasily in Christina's tiny home, casting long shadows that danced like specters on the walls. Every creak of wood, every howl of wind through the thatched roof sounded amplified, as though the darkness itself had ears. She sat near the hearth, gripping the worn rosary her father had once clasped on his deathbed. A string of old wooden beads that had grown slick from years of use. Her lips trembled around silent prayers. Prayers not to a God she knew, but to anything. Anything that might listen. Complete the contract, before the demon takes the body. Evans's voice still echoed in her skull, not like memory, but like a haunting. The wind screamed outside. The walls moaned with it. Then, the whispers began again, but this time, they weren't confined to her mind. They came from the walls, from beneath the floorboards, from the corners of the ceiling. He is coming. Your blood is the last key. The vessel must be sealed. Christina sprang up, heart galloping. She grabbed the oil lamp, its handle hot in her palm, and slowly crept down the hall. Each footstep creaked louder than thunder in her ears. Her instincts pulled her toward her mother's room. She opened the door gently. Her mother lay sleeping, thin and curled like a shadow of her former self. The rhythmic rise and fall of her chest was the only sign she still clung to life. Christina sat beside her, brushing a hand gently over her forehead, a silent apology. She didn't know what she was about to face, but some part of her feared it might be the last time she saw her mother like this. Alive, untouched. Sleep eventually overtook her. Not peaceful, but heavy. A sleep born of sheer exhaustion. But even in slumber, she wasn't safe. In her dreams, she wandered a ruined village, the skies overhead choked with black clouds, and the soil beneath her feet soaked with crimson water. And standing at the far end of the broken road was him, the man in black robes, face veiled in shadow, hands clasped in ritual. He raised his arm, slowly, pointed at her. And behind him, from the broken earth, something rose, something wearing her face. She woke with a jolt just before dawn, her body drenched in sweat, her lips dry and cracked. The beads of her necklace were burning hot against her chest. But something else had changed. The house was too quiet. No sound from the animals, no crowing of the rooster, no barking from John. But of course, John was gone. Something told her to get up, to move. She couldn't explain it, but it pulled at her bones. She wrapped herself in a thick shawl and stepped into the gray dawn. The village was silent. The sky had turned a colorless white, the kind of pale that warned of a storm to come. She walked, past shuttered doors, past huts where the curtains twitched as she passed, to the one place that called to her, Joe's house. Joe, the orphan boy, Master Lee's last student. The only other person who might know the truth. She stood outside for a moment, the air thick with moisture, before knocking gently. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Still nothing. She hesitated, then slowly pushed the door open. The interior was dim, soaked in incense smoke and shadows. Candles burned on a shrine to Master Lee, their flames twitching nervously. Joe was sitting on the floor, alone, facing away. "Joe?" she whispered. He didn't move. She stepped closer, her feet barely making a sound on the wooden floor. Then he turned. And the moment she saw his eyes, she stopped breathing. Those weren't the eyes of a child. They were old, endless, drenched in sorrow and something deeper, something ancient, something not human. And when he spoke, it confirmed her worst fear. Christina Amanda. Her name, drawn out like a funeral hymn. The voice was low, hollow, like it rose from beneath the earth. Christina took an involuntary step back. This was not Joe. "You are the final piece," he said, his voice not rising or falling, just echoing. "Your blood is the key, your body, the perfect vessel." Christina's lips parted, but no words came. Then, without warning, Joe lunged. He moved like a beast on fire, feral and unnatural. His fingers clawed at the air, his mouth opened wide, revealing rows of jagged black teeth that no human should possess. Christina screamed and stumbled backward, falling hard onto the floor. Her oil lamp shattered, flames licking the wooden planks before dying in a hiss. Joe's claws slashed toward her throat, and then a flash of blinding white. The rosary on her neck burst into light, pulsing like a second sun. A sound, like 100 monks chanting in unison, filled the room, shaking the windows, cracking the air. The entity inside Joe shrieked, in agony. Not a child's scream, but something deeper, inhuman. A sound like tearing sinew, like a soul being split. Joe's body was thrown across the room, limbs flailing, blood pouring from his ears and mouth. Silence. Then a weak gasp. Christina crawled over, trembling, hands shaking. Joe's eyes fluttered open. And this time, it was really him. No ancient sorrow, no demonic light. Just a boy. "Sister?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "What are you doing here?" Christina stared in horror. He remembered nothing. She staggered out of the house like someone escaping from a tomb. Her body felt hollow, her mind fractured. The rain began again, soft, then stronger. A storm slowly brewing. She wandered aimlessly down the muddy street, past the fields, until she stopped at the edge of the old temple ruins. The wind howled louder there, and then she saw it. Evans was still there, or what remained of him. But he wasn't alone. A man, cloaked in black robes, face hidden in shadow, stood beside him in the incense ring. The man from her dreams. The one who had whispered to her since childhood. The one who had marked her. She couldn't move. The man raised his hand and began chanting, not in any language of man, but something older. The air distorted, crackled. The earth shook. Evans twisted. His veins bulged. His eyes exploded into black flame. His body arched as the symbols of possession burned themselves into his flesh, glowing crimson. The hooded figure turned toward Christina, though his face was still unseen. His voice, low and final. The first boat has left. And with a sweep of his hand, the fire, the light, the man, all vanished. The darkness swallowed everything. Christina ran. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out, until her soul screamed. She slammed the door of her home and collapsed beside the cold fireplace, holding the broken rosary to her chest. But when she looked into the darkened mirror on the cabinet, she saw her face, and something smiling behind it. Smiling. That was Chapter 3 of Soul Possessor, but the nightmare has just begun. Secrets still hide in shadows. Spirits still hunger. And the demon is not done yet. Stay with us for the next episode. The true horror awaits. Possessor, but the nightmare has just begun. Secrets still hide in shadows. Spirits still hunger. And the demon is not done yet. Stay with us for the next episode. The true horror awaits.
Thank you for listening to Horror Audio Series. If the silence feels heavier tonight, if the darkness lingers longer than usual, you've already opened the door, and something may have followed you through. Don't forget to subscribe, because next time, it might be your story we tell. Sleep, if you can.